As I stepped on my flight, the flight attendant gave me a strange list of rules. "Can I check your ticket, please?" I handed the ticket that I'd been twirling around in my hands for the past hour to the flight attendant. She nodded at it approvingly before producing a sheet of paper from the file that she was holding and placing it inside my folded ticket. "Have a nice flight," she commented enthusiastically before handing my ticket back to me. I grabbed my ticket and stared at the folded sheet of paper inside my ticket curiously before finding my seat. Once I settled down in my seat, I removed the folded sheet of paper from my ticket and placed the ticket in my bag. Upon unfolding the sheet of paper, I realized it was a handwritten note. The handwriting seemed rushed. I've transcribed the note from memory here. Rules for surviving this flight. Do not speak of this sheet to any passenger. You are the only human on this flight. Check the time on your phone after reading this sheet. All rules will apply based on the time of your phone. During the first hour of the flight, do not talk to anyone. People may try to talk to you, but ignore them completely. During the second hour of the flight, you may start talking again, but if anyone mentioned the window, do not look outside the window in any circumstances. If you hear a child crying in the cabin, immediately run to the bathroom. If the screen of your entertainment console suddenly goes black, immediately look away and do not stare at it. During the third hour of the flight, the captain will make an announcement. Follow the instructions. During the fourth hour of the flight, do not sit in your seat. If you make it past the fourth hour, you will need to spend the rest of the flight evading the chaser. You will know who the chaser is when you see them. The captain will make an announcement of the plane landing. As soon as you hear this announcement, push your way to the exit door and open it. You will find that the outside is simply a black void. Jump into it without hesitation. I reread the rules again while chuckling. Did they give one of these to every passenger, or was I somehow randomly chosen for this prank? I checked the time on my phone just to humor the list. 7:13 a.m. So this would be the first hour of the flight. Suddenly, a young man walked over to my seat and sat right beside me. I gave him a casual side glance and saw that he was carrying what looked to be a laptop bag. Great, I thought. He'll work on whatever he's doing and leave me alone for the flight. The man didn't even bother to exchange a single word with me as he settled down in his seat and put on his seatbelt. He stared straight ahead and completely avoided me. I let him be and started to fiddle with my flight console. Some people just like to be left alone, I guess. Soon enough, the captain made an announcement of the plane starting, and the steady hum of the plane engines started to vibrate the entire cabin. The plane started to accelerate until the G-force pushed me into my seat. Moments later, I felt the plane rising into the air. I am typically not scared of flights, but getting on a flight always makes me a bit nervous. This time, though, my stomach was in knots and beads of sweat were running down my forehead. My instincts told me I was stepping into danger, grave danger. I dismissed my thoughts and that awful gut feeling, chalking it down to feeling a little creeped out by the note. The young man on my left suddenly tapped on my shoulder. I jolted up like I'd just been electrocuted. Even through my jacket, his hand felt cold and heavy like a dead person's hand. I turned around and faced the young man. His face seemed wrong. You know how those realistic human robots can creep people out because of how close to human they are, yet subconsciously, we can tell that they aren't human. This man was giving me that same unsettling feeling, and his facial features were just artificial. In a way I couldn't place. Maybe it was his eyes, a little too big, the pupils abnormally dilated, or maybe it was his nose, not exactly in the center of his face, or perhaps it was his mouth, lips way too thin and long. Don't get me wrong, he didn't look obnoxiously fake. In fact, it was those very subtle blemishes in his facial features that made him look like something trying to look like a human. And then he spoke. His voice was normal. Upon hearing his voice, the man seemed to look normal too, and I thought I was just freaking out for no reason. "Hey, do you wear headphones?" he asked. That was a weird question to ask. Did he want headphones? I was about to open my mouth to speak when he spoke again. How would you feel if I cut your hand off right now? What was disturbing wasn't the nature of the question itself, but the fact that he spoke in such a calm manner. It was as if he was asking me how my day was. Suddenly, my mind went to the list of rules that I had subconsciously been squeezing in my hand. The first rule said to not talk to anyone on the flight, no matter how much they try to talk to you. I decided to ignore the man. He seemed really weird anyways, and if I was being honest, the list of rules wasn't the reason I chose to ignore him. He stopped pestering me and returned to work on his laptop. I looked over at his laptop slowly and gasped at what I saw. On his screen, he had a photo of me on his screen. That's it. Nothing else, just a full screen photo of me. Before I could process that properly, I looked over at his keyboard and noticed that it wasn't a standard keyboard. In fact, it really wouldn't even count as a keyboard. It was made up of oddly shaped keys, all marked with strange letters that I doubt existed. The man continued to stare intently at the photo of me on his screen. It was then that I realized that the list of rules wasn't a joke. Suddenly, a flight attendant popped out of nowhere and asked me, "Sir, is this man bothering you?" "Yes, he is," I replied before my voice caught up in my throat. In under a second, everyone in the cabin snapped their heads around until they were staring directly at me. Their faces, they all looked wrong. Inhuman. Slowly, their long, thin lips curled into wide smiles, and red tears started to roll down their faces, red. Not transparent, not watery, thick, dark, red. The entire cabin was smiling at me. Every single passenger. Their pupils were blown wide, swallowing their irises. Their lips stretched too far across their faces. Not grinning, peeling. The flight attendant's grip tightened on my shoulder. "Sir," she repeated, voice still bright, cheerful, perfectly rehearsed. "Is this man bothering you?" Her mouth didn't move with the words. The words came from somewhere deeper, like the cabin itself was speaking. My heart hammered. First hour, do not talk to anyone. I had just answered her. Everyone was staring. The young man beside me slowly turned his laptop toward me. The image changed. It wasn't just a photo anymore. It was live footage of me sitting in this seat. But the me on the screen wasn't frozen in fear. He was smiling, and he was looking directly at me. Then the version of me on the screen lifted his hand and waved. My stomach dropped. I jerked my gaze away from the screen immediately. If the entertainment console goes black, look away. But this wasn't my console. Still, don't stare, don't engage. The entire cabin tilted their heads in unison, like curious dogs. The flight attendant leaned closer. "You spoke," she whispered. The lights flickered. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I yanked it out. 8:01 a.m., second hour. I could talk again. But if anyone mentions the window, do not look outside. The young man beside me leaned in, his breath icy against my ear. "Beautiful sunrise out there," he murmured. The word window hung unspoken, but implied. The entire right side of the cabin began to chant softly. "Look, look, look, look." I squeezed my eyes shut. A hand grabbed my chin and tried to turn my face toward the window. The skin felt loose, like it was sliding over bone. "Don't you want to see?" the flight attendant asked sweetly. I kept my eyes shut. Something wet dripped onto my cheek. Red tears. The chanting grew louder. Then, a child began crying, a piercing, shrill, unnatural wail. Every head in the cabin snapped upward. The crying didn't echo. It vibrated like it was coming from inside my skull. Rule: if you hear a child crying, immediately run to the bathroom. I lunged out of my seat. The aisle stretched. It wasn't that long before. Now it seemed endless. Passengers reached out as I ran past them, their fingers elongated, jointed wrong, trying to grab me. The crying got louder, closer, like it was right behind me. I sprinted and threw myself into the nearest bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it. Silence. Instant. Total. I stared at myself in the mirror, but it wasn't me. The reflection was delayed. I lifted my hand. It lifted its hand a second later, smiling. I didn't smile. It did. Its eyes bled. A crack split across the mirror. The lights flickered. Then the bathroom screen, the tiny ad display above the sink, went black. Immediately look away. I turned around, pressing my face against the door. Behind me, I heard whispering from the black screen. Stay. Watch. Just look. I didn't. Minutes passed, or hours. My phone buzzed again. 9:02 a.m., third hour. The captain will make an announcement. Follow the instructions. The intercom crackled. Static filled the cabin. Then, passengers, the captain's voice said, distorted and layered like multiple voices speaking at once. Please remove your faces. Screams echoed outside, wet sounds, peeling, tearing. Something thudded against the bathroom door. Another announcement. Correction, human passenger, proceed to cockpit. Human passenger, you are the only human on this flight. The crying child resumed, but now it was laughing. I unlocked the door slowly. The aisle was empty. Seats were occupied, but the passengers were wrong. They were facing backward, all of them. Their heads twisted 180 degrees to watch me. Their faces were gone. Smooth skin stretched where features should be. They stood up in unison. I ran. Toward the cockpit. The fourth hour approached. Do not sit in your seat. I wasn't planning to. The cockpit door was open. Inside, there was no captain, just two empty uniforms slumped in chairs, and a third seat facing away from me. Someone was sitting there. My height, my build. The chair slowly rotated. It was me. Not the screen version, not the mirror version. This one looked exhausted, terrified. I made it this far, too, he whispered. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? I asked. He looked at me with hollow eyes. This isn't your first time. The cabin shook violently. Outside the cockpit windows, there was no sky, just black, pure void. You always make it to the fourth hour, he continued. Then you try to escape. A loud thud echoed from behind me. The passengers were crawling toward the cockpit. On the ceiling, on the walls, smiling without faces. Fourth hour, do not sit in your seat. The version of me in the captain's chair stood up. I stayed in the seat, he said softly. I thought maybe it would end. His skin began splitting. Something underneath moved. It didn't. His body tore open like fabric, and something stepped out of him. Tall, unnaturally thin, featureless except for one massive, unblinking eye. It looked at me, and I knew. The chaser. If you make it past the fourth hour, you will need to spend the rest of the flight evading the chaser. The creature tilted its head, then sprinted. I ran. The cabin no longer resembled a plane. It stretched infinitely, rose looping impossibly. Gravity shifting, passengers peeling themselves apart to clear its path. It didn't run fast. It didn't need to. It always knew where I was. Hours blurred. My phone vibrated violently. Time was glitching. 11:59, 3:12, 6:47, backwards, forwards, then ding. The captain's voice returned. Prepare for landing. The entire cabin froze. The chaser stopped inches behind me. Landing. As soon as you hear the announcement, push your way to the exit door and open it. I bolted, shoving past frozen, smiling passengers. Throwing myself at the emergency exit, I ripped it open. Wind didn't rush in. There was no sky, just black. An endless void. The chaser shrieked. The passengers began screaming, not in hunger, in fear. Don't go, they cried in unison. Stay this time. Stay this time. I didn't hesitate. I jumped, falling, endless, silent. Then, impact. I gasped and shot upright, back in my airplane seat. Cabin normal, passengers normal, sunlight pouring through the window. The young man beside me glanced over casually. First time flying? He asked politely. My hands trembled. I looked down. No note, no blood, no red tears. Just my boarding pass. The captain announced cruising altitude. My phone buzzed. 7:13 a.m., the exact time I first checked it, my stomach dropped. Slowly, very slowly. The passenger across the aisle turned his head toward me, a little too far. His smile stretched, just slightly, and from somewhere deep in the cabin, a child began to cry.